There's 4 kind of stages that we see here as people choose to follow Jesus. And these are the stages that I think are important for us. And as I've led for many years in the church, I have seen this happen over and over and over again. That there have been moments where people immediately chose to follow. I'm not going to say that there aren't. But by and large, there has been a lot that I've seen come in these 4 stages that we see in the book of Luke. And here are the 4 stages based on this story. Let's look at the first one. Is to sit and listen. You see, Jesus invites people to listen and to sit. We see this at the very beginning of the story, that he's sitting there and he's teaching those that are on the shore. And then he ends up going out in the boat, and then he teaches those who are on the shore. And for many people, this is where their faith journey starts. They're maybe exploring online. No jokes, most times it starts with YouTube, right? Which can be a whole different mix of things. But starts on YouTube, or reading a book that your friend gave you, or maybe even accepting an invite to church and you're sitting here and you're listening. But there's a moment in our faith journey where we can take that step. And for many people, the beginning stages of following Jesus is sitting and listening, examining the evidence. And the only commitment here that Jesus is asking for is just sit and to listen. He's just teaching the people. He's not scolding them for sitting and listening. It's part of the journey. And so people are sitting and they're listening. And that might be where you're sitting today. But your first step is you've come, you're sitting and you're listening. Maybe you tracked at church online, or maybe you talked to a friend. But you've sat and you've listened and you're examining and you're reasoning. That's what we see here in the story. Is the first stage is just sitting and listening. This is what we see next, though, is to loan him the boat. This is a little bit more commitment. It's a small inconvenience, let's say. It might be the small inconvenience of starting point, where you begin to go in a starting point class, and you begin to class or group, and you begin to hear stories of other people in their faith journeys, as well as get to hear what it means to follow Jesus and what that looks like. It might be you beginning to pray. It might be beginning for you to read the New Testament, or to get involved in a serve team, to just loan the boat. A small inconvenience, just leaning in a little bit more. And we see this in the second stage, that he says, hey, Peter, can you bring out the boat for me? And then he goes out. He's teaching, he's sitting and listening, then he brings the boat out. And then we see the next stage. And this is where it gets really exciting. Not that the other 2 aren't, but this is where the rubber starts hitting road. Take him fishing. And here in all of our stories, there's going to come a point where it doesn't make sense to you. There's a point where you go, man, I know I've been wanting to pursue a relationship for a long time, but God's asking me to maybe take 3 months to do things a little bit different and slow things down and just focus on my relationship with God. Or maybe you've been at that job for a year and it's sucking your soul. And you're like, oh, I don't want to make a decision. I kind of committed to this, but you know it's not right, and it's moving on from that job. Or maybe it's something a little bit different, where it's inconveniencing you a little bit more personally. Maybe it's committing to small group, not just for 1 semester, but for longer, to see the life change in a small group or a serve team. Maybe even financially, reorienting your finances. Percentage giving. I don't know what it looks like for you, but there's some point on the faith journey that Jesus is going to ask us to do something that doesn't make sense in our minds. And although we've sat and we've listened and we've reasoned, although we've loaned him just a little bit more time and that small inconvenience to loan him the boat, there's a point where we have to put down our nets. And unless we do, and I'm going to talk to those who have been on the journey for a little while. If you're trying to figure this out and you're in like the sit and listen phase, or you're in the loan him the boat phase, it's okay. You can take a deep breath here. But for some of us, if I can be really direct, COVID has become an excuse to not go fishing. And it's not just you I'm talking to, it's me as well. There's things that have come up. Community has never been more challenging than right now. It was so good on Friday night. We had the music team over at our house, and we just sat, and we laughed. We ate good food, right? All my Nespresso pods are gone. I got to go back down to Metro Town. Come on, Nespresso, come to this side of the river. Okay. Some of you are like, oh, Nespresso, you're just such a wasteful person. I might be. But at some point, we need to take him fishing. At some point, we need to take the words of James, Jesus' half-brother, seriously. And I'm talking to Christians right now, or those that call yourselves followers of Jesus. Faith without works is dead. And our faith dies if we stop fishing. To follow Jesus means that we continue through the 4 stages, and here's the last one. And this is where the whole game changed. For me and for many of you, when you chose to follow Jesus and you left your nets. And this is the stage that's so exciting, but it's such a big risk because we open our hands to God and we say, with my whole life, I choose to give it to you. Have your way. And it didn't happen overnight for many of us. It began in this process that we sat and we listened. And then we said, you know what? You can inconvenience me a little bit more. I'm going to spend some more time there. And then you're like taking and fishing. And you're like, oh, okay, I'm dropping the nets down. And I'm doing maybe one thing that's inconvenient right now. But there's some point where we say, God, it's just not one thing that I'm going to give you. I'm going to give you my whole life. And I'm going to open up my whole hands. And I believe the best is ahead for us as a church. Not because we're really great people, but because we serve a great God who we follow. But it comes at laying down our nets. And I don't know what stage you are. I don't know what point you are in the journey. Maybe it's just sitting and listening. Maybe it's just taking some time to loan your boat, a small inconvenience. Maybe it's one thing that you need to let your net down on and say, well, that's a little unusual or unpredictable, but I'm going to do it. Or maybe you're at a point where you've been waffling a little bit and you know that you need to go all in, but you're hesitating. I don't know what step it is, but this is what I want to encourage you with today. Take it. You won't regret it. I don't look back and regret the things that God has done through my life. Has it been challenging and hard at times? Absolutely. I mean, Jesus tells us it's going to be hard and challenging. But it's better. Because Jesus makes us better. And Jesus also walks with us in the journey. So I don't know where you are today, but I want to encourage you to take your next step.